Good to go.
All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's Tech Talk with the Tech Academy. We have Sean Lemson here with us today, and he's going to talk about the 6 leadership traps for us. So thank you for being here and take it away.
All right. So guess what? It's not 6, it's 7. It's not your fault, it's mine. I was having an executive coaching session a few days ago, and we uncovered a 7th. And I'm like, oh, this is definitely going in my talk. So I added the 7th in. So bonus, you get 7 traps that leaders can fall into, and we're going to go. So let me start my sharing here. And what I'm going to do is, hopefully this is going to work out. I'm going to turn my camera off whoa, my screen started getting really jittery. Can you all still see me over there in the presentation? There, it's better now.
We can, yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys will be able to look for me in the screen rather than on the Google Talk, because why not? Then that keeps your eyes here. So let's get started. And if I didn't make this clear already, please, if you have a question, raise your hand or put it in chat or wave your arm around. Somebody's watching, they'll interrupt me and unmute the mic and let you ask it. Interrupt me anytime. So who am I? I am the founder of Motivated Outcomes. Motivated Outcomes is a company that I have founded to try to turn companies into places people want to work again. I find that we've lost sight of what it means to take care of employees, and that employees are human beings, not just resources. So that's the gist of my company, to help employers raise employee engagement, bring people back. What are the policies that are making employees not want to work here? You know, that kind of a thing. So that's what I'm after, and that's what the company's after. So my role in that is I'm a leadership and team performance coach. That means I spend a lot of time coaching teams and leaders to try to help them achieve performance. I've worked at quite a few companies, most recently Nike. There's even more companies that I listed here. I'm very old. Let's not talk about that. Author of upcoming book. That's me. I'm going to be writing this book called One Drop of Poison: How One Bad Leader Can Slowly Kill Your Company. It is going to be released next year. I can't give you a more solid date than that, but if I had my hopes and wishes, it would be early next year. It's almost done, but I had to pause writing it for some reasons that we just talked about. So if you're late joining and you don't know those reasons, that's your loss for being late. All right. It's not that important anyway. My favorite motto is practice makes, and this is the place I normally ask everybody to unmute and yell it out, and everybody yells perfect. And then I say permanent. Practice makes permanent. Actually, I know the saying is practice makes perfect, but practice really makes permanent. You can actually permanently learn to do the wrong thing. You can do the wrong thing perfectly. So what I tell people is this is what coaches are needed for. Coaches are to help you to practice the right thing. And that's one of the things that my company is about. And what I want to talk to you today about are the 7 traps of leadership. And this would be one of the things that I would advise leaders to practice well. How this might help you if you are a leader, fantastic. You're going to learn a lot from this today. If you're not a leader, you will know how to spot this behavior in your leaders. And you can either help them or refer them to me, and I will help them. But you'll be able to get the idea of how they're behaving and how that might be impacting you. So first, we need to talk about this. What is an anti-pattern? There are two elements to an anti-pattern, okay? It's different from a bad habit, a bad practice, or a bad idea, okay? The first is that it's a commonly used pattern of action. Despite initially appearing to be an appropriate and effective response, it's got more bad consequences than good ones, okay? So typically this is why it's a trap, right? It looks like the right thing to do, but it's always the wrong thing to do. Okay, so that's one of the things of an anti-pattern. The second is that another solution exists to the problem that the anti-pattern is attempting to address. And this solution is documented, repeatable, and proven to be effective, where the anti-pattern is not. Okay. So in other words, someone who's doing an anti-pattern is tricked into doing it, and they think, and they're ignoring a solution that is known that works. Okay. Those are the two key elements of an anti-pattern. And I got to tell you guys, this is me when I had hair. Okay. I mean, I am let me tell you why that second one makes me bang my head against the wall, because there are hundreds of documented solutions, hundreds. I'm only showing you a very small list here of fantastic books that leaders could be reading that would help them understand the correct way to do what they're doing. But they ignore these books and have ignored them for many years. In fact, the one on the right there, The Human Side of Enterprise by Douglas McGregor, was written in the late 50s. That book, Douglas McGregor is the one who actually coined the phrases Theory X and Theory Y. Theory X management means I'm very top down. I tell you what to do. You must be managed. If I don't tell you what to do, it's not going to be done well. Theory Y is very much like, hey, I'm going to hire people that really know what they're doing, and then I'm going to get the hell out of their way. That's good leadership, right? We've been talking about these two styles of leadership since then, since the late 50s, and people are still doing it wrong. Okay. So again, I'm sorry, but I have to show you this GIF again. This is me. As my role, I am continually astounded that I'm dealing with leaders who continue to do the wrong thing when the right thing is so well documented. Okay. So let's talk about 7 traps that I think fit both of these criteria of an anti-pattern. The first trap, toxic positivity. You might be thinking, what in the hell is that? Okay, toxic positivity. I'm going to let Liz Wiseman here describe it. And I hope you guys can hear the audio. I never asked whether I could share a video inside of a video. Will that work, you guys, do you think?
Let's give it a try.
All right,
I think so.
I'm going to hit play. If you can't hear her speaking, just say so, and I'll tell you what she says.
A couple years ago, I'm working on a pretty complex project, a really intense piece of research and writing. And at one point in the project, my colleague says to me, he goes, Liz, I need you to stop saying that. Naturally curious, I said something brilliant like, saying what? He goes, you know that thing you say all the time. Well, I had no clue what it was I said all the time. And so it was like he'd been waiting months to give me this little speech. And he said, how hard can it be? We can do this. We've got this. We can figure it out. How hard can it be? Now I'm sensing this optimism. And what I'm explaining to him is actually, that's my way of saying we're smart, we're capable, we'll figure this out, we can do it, which I thought was particularly helpful. And he said, that is the thing I need you to stop saying. I said, why? He said, because what we're doing, Liz, is hard. And as my manager, I need you to acknowledge it.
Yeah, acknowledging it. Toxic positivity, the trap of toxic positivity. By this way, this toxic positivity happens in personal relationships as well as professional, okay? But I'm talking specifically about the part that leaders get wrong here, okay? It's responding to someone else's concern or suffering without any empathy. At least that's how it appears to the person who's being responded to. Empathy never begins with at least, right? Like, well, at least you still have another arm. Is not very comforting when you just lost an arm, right? Toxic positivity often starts with at least, okay? Everything happens for a reason. You'll hear that one. Everything will work out. Or what Liz just said, how hard can it be? These are all very dismissive, positive statements, and they're very enticing because they seem positive. Like Liz said, she thought she was doing the right thing. By the way, Liz Wiseman is the author of a book called Multipliers, and she calls that behavior, toxic positivity, accidental diminishing, meaning that it's management style that diminishes, but it's accidental. The leader isn't waking up going, I hope I can make everybody feel like less of a person today. They actually think they're doing the right thing, but they're actually doing the wrong thing. Okay. Now, the people who have toxic positivity are avoiding or denying negativity or difficulty. They're whistling past the graveyard. If you've never heard that phrase, because I'm old again, I forgot to mention that. And I've been saying this for a while, but I've said it before and people say, what does that even mean? Okay, let me define it. It's attempting to stay cheerful in a dire situation, or to proceed with the task, ignoring a hazard or hoping for a good outcome. It's like a very nervous whistling, like just to keep you happy. Oh, how hard could it be? Right? So that's whistling past the graveyard, often unintentionally harmful to relationships. Why would it be harmful? Well, because when someone tells you that something is hard, they're being vulnerable. They're saying, this is difficult for me, right? And when you say, how hard can it be? Then they get a shame moment happening almost. It's like they're saying, you know, well, wait a minute, I just told you how hard it was for me, and now you're telling me it shouldn't be hard. So then what's wrong with me? There must be something wrong with me, right? That's one approach. Is I thought it was going to be hard. You're telling me it's not hard. So there must be something wrong with me because it's hard for me. Okay. Or it looks hard for me. There's another side of that coin, which is I can be extremely confident that it's hard, right? If I'm a 747 pilot and you want to land the plane, but you're not, and I say it's hard, and you say, how hard can it be? I'm going to think you're an idiot. Okay. If I know it's hard and you say, how hard can it be? Then I'm thinking you're pretty naive, right? So I'm either going to feel shamed from you saying that, or I'm going to feel like you don't know what you're talking about, right? It's not a good thing to actually have this positivity. Leaders cannot connect with employees if they can't empathize with them first, right? Toxic positivity is a great way to show naivete or lack of empathy, right? Great way to do that. So we're going to go through these two for every one of these traps, or with these two slides. They falsely believe that their avoidance of negativity or difficulty is helpful. Like you heard Liz say, right? I thought I was being helpful. Their optimism is supportive and a vote of confidence, right? She said, hey, we can do this. How hard can it be? Is her way of saying we're all smart, right? And we can do it. Their positivity instills confidence in the employee and endears the leader to the employee. That's what they believe, not they falsely believe that. Okay, so to avoid this trap, refrain from using phrases that dismiss difficulty. Replace how hard can it be with really what you mean, which is we're smart and I'm confident we're going to figure it out. That is confidence instilling, and it doesn't necessarily dismiss the difficulty of it, right? But better would be to refrain from making any statements at all and just ask some powerful questions. Can you tell me more? What's already working that we can build on? What part is not yet clear? Like, get to the bottom of the difficulty, right? Without making a judgment about the difficulty, and try not to ignore someone else's admission that it looks hard to them. All right. Now, trap number 2, adding people means going faster. Here's Brooks' law. For those of you in development, this is probably a very common phrase you've heard. Adding manpower to a software project that's behind schedule delays it even longer. Okay, well, why is that? This is the change J curve. And basically what happens is we think that when we add people to a project, it's going to be that blue line. But actually what happens is the red line. Now, the reason why it happens is because when someone new joins the team, or people, the more people, the worse this gets. Everybody has to slow down to teach the new person, to get them up to speed, right? So that's that dip. They're learning the code, they're learning the environment, they're learning the politics, whatever, and you're having to teach it. And instead of you focusing on getting the goal done, now you're focusing on teaching this person and getting them up to speed, right? So everybody's slowing down. Usually you put your star player on the training part. The star player is the one that would have been helping you get that blue line, okay? But they can't do it anymore now. All right. There's another factor that happens that I think is even more. So many people already know about this J curve, but what you may not be realizing is there's another model that comes into play called the Tuckman model. And you may not have heard it as the Tuckman model, but you might have heard of what it stands for, the 4 phases. You might have heard of it as forming, storming, norming, and performing, right? What happens in this stage is that teams when they form, they aren't performing very well. And then they sort of, they kind of go up a little bit, but remember, everyone is like still learning each other's boundaries. So nobody's saying anything. And then at some point, somebody's had enough of something, right? And they say, you know what, Jim, I hate it when you say that. And then whoop, it starts a thing, and there's a tiff on the team, or they disagree finally. I don't agree with this direction. And then now you're going to have a debate, and there's going to be a storming phase. There might even be two camps forming in silos and all kinds of things, right? Teams are not guaranteed to make it out of the storming phase, but many do, okay? And if you make it out of the storming phase, you will be performing higher than you were at the forming stage, or even at the peak of the forming stage, because you're now more comfortable with each other, and you can call each other out on stuff, and it doesn't seem like a thing, because you all know each other well. And if you stay together long enough, you can get to performing, right? Where you really get to know each other. You can almost finish each other's sentences. Okay. Here's the problem. Most companies reorg right here. It drives me crazy. I would put the head banging icon up here again if I could. I get called in by companies all the time. Hey, can you help us get our teams to be higher performing? It just never seem to get to high performing. Yeah, when's the last time you reorged? Yesterday. You know, I think I might know the problem. Because every time a team resets, the cycle begins at forming. So you remember when I said that new person joins and the J curve dips to the bottom? Every time that new person joins, the team also goes back to the forming stage, because now we're back to, I don't trust this guy. I don't know if he trusts me. I don't know whether, you know what I mean? We're at this spot where we're like, we can't tell. And so everybody gets all quiet again, right? And you have to go back through the whole phase. So this is something that people don't realize about the Tuckman model, that it's constantly being sent back to the forming stage every time they change the team membership. Okay. So leaders who fall into this trap falsely believe that when projects fall behind, they just need more people. They believe that knowledge work benefits from the divide and conquer approach. Like, oh, we got more people, just divide up the work and go. Knowledge work doesn't always work that way, right? Employees see adding people to their team as a plus. In other words, that person who is your star player, who was working on the objective that you just said, oh, by the way, Jim, you got to bring this new player up to speed. They think that that makes that Jim real happy because they're going to have help. Well, yeah, but now Jim can't do the work. He can't finish he's distracted from what he was doing. So they often don't see it as a plus. They also believe that people are resources and that they're interchangeable. When I talk to leaders like this, they're very much like, they feel like they're chess players, and that all the employees in their team are just pieces to be told what to be, where to be next, right? I'm just going to tell you where to be next. It's very theory X, okay? As we were discussing before. If I don't tell you what to do, then nothing will get done. Those kinds of leaders. To avoid this trap, prevention's the best medicine, right? You're adding people because you're trying to go faster. You're trying to go faster probably because you're behind, okay? So don't be behind. Avoid committing too early for dates that are complex, for complex work. I'm going to talk about what complex work is in a second. Have good Agile practices in place, backlog, story sizing, capacity, planning, velocity, all that stuff. Have that in place, and consider unlocking or renegotiating scope rather than trying to add people. Hey, we promised you the moon. We don't have enough people to get you the moon. Would you be okay with, a ride up at 30,000 feet? Okay. Trap number 3, treating complex work as if it's complicated. I said I was going to talk about complexity. Let's talk about it. This is a model called the Kneffen model. If you haven't seen it, I'd love for you to go down to the link at the bottom of that slide, and I'm assuming you guys will get the deck. Is that true? I can send the deck, or you guys can send the deck out?
Yeah, we can.
I was trying to figure out where my mic button was, but yes, I can definitely share it with everyone.
Okay, cool. I'll send it to you guys, and you're welcome to share it to anybody. Make the world a better place through avoiding 7 traps of leadership. So let's talk about the Kneffen model. It's divided in half: unpredictable on the left, predictable on the right. This graph is about to get very busy. There are 4 quadrants to this model. Obvious, the work is obvious, like baking a cake. I follow the recipe, I get a cake every time. Complicated. Putting someone on the moon is complicated. There's a lot of science involved. We know the science. It still requires expertise, right? The experts have to figure out how to do it, but it can be done. It's complicated. That's what complicated means. It requires expertise, but it's predictable. Complex means that cause and effect only make sense in hindsight, right? So we're standing in front of a choice, A, B, and C. We choose B because for what we know now, B looks like the best choice. As soon as we choose B, 3 new options appear, A, B, and C. So now we choose A, okay? Now from where we're standing, 3 new selections appear. And based on what we know about our B and A choice, C now looks like the best choice, right? And we keep doing this. And when we get to the end, when we look back, all the decisions we'll have made will make sense because it'll look like, yeah, of course, like there was no other choice in this case. But it didn't look like that when we only had the 3 choices. So the first 3 choices. So that's complexity. It makes sense in hindsight. I'm going to give you an example here in a second too to make it clearer. Chaos is there is no relation to cause and effect. Things are just happening and I have no idea why they're happening. We cannot figure it out. There's no connection at all to what's triggering what's happening. There's actually a 5th space on the model, which is called disorder. And that's when I don't know which of the 4 I'm in. That's actually a worse place to be, honestly. And I'll give you an example of that. If we were all sitting in a room right now and there was a loud bang outside, really loud, right? For a moment, we would all be sitting there looking at each other like, what was that? Right? And we are in disorder because it could be a car backfiring. It could be a gunshot. It could be a bomb going off. It could be someone dropped a pallet off of a forklift. It could be anything, right? If it's any of those things, we're pattern matching. We're trying to figure it out. What could it be? What could it be? Once we know, oh, it was a gunshot. Now we're in chaos. Chaos, at least we know what to do. Run, right? In disorder, we didn't know what to do. So chaos is actually a better place to be than disorder. All right, a couple more things to know about this model. Everything on the right side, predictable. The best response to this is planning. So that's when you're going to see your Gantt charts for putting people on the moon. It's where we could sit in a room and plan out every single step because the science is known. We're going to fire the thrusters at this many seconds, and then that'll make this happen. We know exactly what's going to happen. It's just a matter of planning it out, right? On the other side, though, the best response is experimentation. Okay, we don't know, so all we can do is experiment. What did I see something here? Yes. Okay, I know some more now, and that's what we're doing when we choose A, B, and C. We're doing an experiment, and then we learn something. So now we have a more informed choice for the next thing. Okay, that's complex. And by the way, software development is complex most of the time. Okay. All right. So here's an example. Basic or obvious would be walking and jogging, right? 1 foot in front of the other. Jogging, just doing that a little bit faster. But running a marathon is different. Experts disagree on the strategy of winning a marathon, right? Do you carb up or don't you carb up? Do you carb up? Do you rest or do you run the day before? So many different strategies people use, and it requires expertise, okay? Hunting would be an example of complexity, right? There's no amount of sitting in my truck in the middle of the forest with a whiteboard and a marker that I can tell you when I'm going to have a deer. We just can't do it. All we can do is get out of the truck and start experimenting. Walk in a direction. Oh, there's some deer prints, hoof prints, right? We're probably in the right direction. They look fresh. That's an experiment. We now have some data. Or we've walked for a day and haven't seen a single sign of a deer. Maybe we should try changing directions. That's all you can do when you're hunting. Zombie apocalypse would be an example of chaotic, right? I don't know what's going on. All I know is a bunch of dead people are running around trying to kill me. Okay. So, and by the way, most zombie movies follow this model in clockwise order, right? They start the movie with what the hell's going on? And then they start doing experiments and they shoot him in the chest and nothing happens. And then they shoot him in the head and they figure out, oh, that does something. So now we're moving to complicated. I got to get really good at taking headshots. And now by the end of the movie, everybody's just like, over the back of their shoulder. It's the same flow. I hope these jokes are landing. Anyway, let's keep going. On the left side of this model, the unpredictable model, is where Agile lives. Agile enjoys the experimentation and the complexity, and it's why you see Agile methodologies being pushed a lot during software development. It's a natural fit for complex work. Agile doesn't work really well when you're building a bridge. Building a bridge is something I would call complicated, right? I mean, we can plan it out. We know how many girders, we know the rules, there's engineering, we have it all. We have the science, okay? So waterfall tends to live on the right side of this model. That's where you're going to see all the Gantt charts, okay? Why am I telling you this? Because so many leaders this is the trap. I needed to give you this background so you understand the trap. Leaders that fall into this trap think of complex work as complicated. They treat complex work as complicated. So what they do is they make you plan when what they really need to do is let you experiment, because they think the work is complicated, but it's really complex. Does that make sense? So that's the trap, right? And for complex work, we should be following the cone of uncertainty. If you've never seen the cone of uncertainty, ta-da, here it is. It basically just says that if you're going to make an estimate right at the beginning, you're going to be way off. And in order to make, you should never make promises back here, right? Only make promises over here after you've done some experimentation and you know more. At this point, at the very beginning, this will be the moment you know the least. And of course, this will be the moment you know the most because you're done. So somewhere in between is a moment when you probably could make a commitment, but it's not way back here. Okay. All right. So leaders who fall into this trap, they think the work is predictable and that it's possible to plan your way through to the end. They believe that the date that it will be done is knowable way in advance. They think that the resources needed are knowable and budgetable. Don't get me started on budgets, especially annual budgets, where the finance group says to every manager in the company, hey, make sure you tell me how many headcount you're going to need for the next year for all the projects you're working on. Are you kidding me? Do you know what kind of world we're living in right now? Do you think I can honestly predict what this company is going to be building for the next year? I'll be lucky to be able to tell you what we're going to be building in the next 3 months, right? And what I tell leaders when I'm giving talks about this, I ask leaders, how many of you had COVID on your 5-year roadmap in 2019? And most of the leaders just chuckle. Yeah, you didn't. How much time did you waste making the 5-year roadmap? Because most of your lives changed completely when COVID hit. So why spend 5 years planning out what you're going to be when you're likely not going to be there? Demand the unknowable. So these leaders demand the unknowable and they receive fiction in return. I tell leaders, you can demand it if you want, and what you're going to get is a lie. And if the lie is what you want, congratulations, you got it. If you want to know the truth, you're going to have to wait until the experiments are done. You can't just demand the result from back here at the start line. Okay, so that's the trap. You want to avoid the trap? Study this Kneffen model. Really get to know it. Get good at classifying the work through this lens. Explain the model to your teams and ask them to tell you which categories of work belong in which quadrants of their work. Ask them, hey, our work here, some of it's probably complicated, some of it's probably complex. Which is which? Right? I might ask you to plan out the complicated stuff, but if we're clear about what's complex, I won't. I'll support your ability to experiment. Push back on people who are demanding to know the impossible to know, right? Teach them the model too. Work to change the financial policies of the company that demand these kinds of numbers. As I said, annual budgeting and so on. Trust your employees when they tell you that something is complex. Now, there is one exception to that. If you happen to know for a fact that something is complicated when they're telling you it's complex, that could be because for you, it's complicated. So for example, if you asked me to put someone on the moon, it's complex. I mean, I'm going to have to start all the experiments myself. I don't know the science, right? But an expert, a rocket engineer, would already have all that science, and they've already done all those experiments. So for them, it's complicated. So there is a skill set thing. You actually do move through the model with skills, okay? So if your employees are not skilled enough, they might view the work as complex. And that would just be an opportunity for you to train employees, not an opportunity for you to force them to give you a projection. Okay. Trap number 4, setting a target on a metric. I'm going to ask this question, and unfortunately, I can't get answers, right? Because nobody can unmute and ask and answer the question. But would you trust your gas gauge if it wanted you to be happy? I know that's a weird question, but just imagine for a moment. Let's anthropomorphize our gas gauge. So you've got a gas gauge that wants you to be happy, and you know this about it. It wants you to be happy. Would you trust it anymore? Likely no, because it knows you're happier when you have gas and very unhappy when you don't. So it'll show you that you have gas. Yay, you're happy, but you actually don't. And the first time you run out of gas, when the thing is showing you 3/4, you'd be like, I can't trust you anymore. That simple explanation is the reason why this is a law. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. This is Goodhart's law. Okay. The target is making me happy. If I set the gas gauge to make me happy, it will no longer be a good measurement. The gas gauge will no longer show me a good measurement. Now I'm going to show you how this works at companies. So leaders want an outcome. I'm going to use examples as I go. At a company that I worked at recently, there was an engineering director. Actually, he was higher than that. He was like the CTO of the company of our division. Okay. He thought that what would be a great idea is to put a target on cycle time. If you don't know what cycle time is, it's the time it takes to begin and end a story. Okay. A user story. So a piece of work. How long I start the clock when you start working on it, I stop the clock when you stop working on it, right? We call that cycle time. Now, this leader basically thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get everybody to move faster. I want people to move faster. That's the outcome I want. That's X. So I'm going to put a target on cycle time. Now you'll notice that I call that X star, right? That's not X. X is moving faster. X star is cycle time. It sort of measures the speed with which things are being done, but it's not every aspect of what makes a story get done, right? There's other aspects. So they set this measurement, a target. And in this case, this director wanted a 5% reduction of cycle time. So he said to the teams, this quarter, I want a 5% reduction in cycle time. Thank you very much. My work here is done as a leader. Y'all are great. Bye. And expected everyone, okay, cool. All we got to do is just work faster. Unfortunately, that's not what happened, because the organization begins to optimize for X star, meaning he wanted my cycle time to go down. He didn't say go faster. He said reduce my cycle time. So therefore, they found all kinds of creative ways. Okay. They're literally gaming the system here. All kinds of creative ways, most of which would never have been approved by this guy. He would have liked, if he had heard that the trade-offs the teams were making to get cycle time down, he would have been appalled. And I tried to tell him, he didn't listen to me, but that's beside the point. Like they were doing things like cutting out the QA, writing shorter stories. Hey, this story that I used to be writing a story to make this coffee cup right here, and that's the value. So great. When they're done, they have something to drink with. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to break it up into a handle story and a cup story. Now I'm going to make the handle first. Look at how fast I got that done. My cycle time is down, but I only have a handle. It's useless. It's not value, right? I can make my cycle time go down in a lot of ways that have nothing to do with what this leader intended. Okay. And as time goes on, people start to confuse cycle time with going faster, right? So it's not, though. It's just cycle time. It's a measurement. And unfortunately, after a while, both speed, quality, and a bunch of other things like the story value delivered and all that all start to suffer. But boy, the cycle time looks amazing. See the problem? So that's all because they set a target on a metric. And it's really because that target came from above. Okay. I'll get to that in a second. Leaders who fall into this trap falsely believe that these targets will drive the right behavior. And they also believe this is the only way to change behavior. So when I talk to these leaders, they'll go, oh yeah, well, how else am I supposed to do it? I'm like, there's like 50 other ways I could think about for you to change leadership or to change the behavior of the organization. But just setting a target on a measurement is not the way. It's whack-a-mole. You will never find the right target on the right measurement to drive the right behavior. Everybody will find a way to game the system. Okay. And in fact, not only will they game the system, but you will have rendered the measurement that used to be valuable as completely useless from this point forward, because now it's being gamed. So instead of setting targets and destroying metrics that used to be good, how about not setting targets and just monitoring them, right? Inspiring the team other way to move faster without setting targets, and then use those metrics to track how you're doing. How to avoid the trap? Don't try to control behavior with handed down targets. Handed down targets. That's the key. Set goals and direction. Hey, everybody, I'd love to see us moving faster, right? I'm going to leave it up to you guys to figure out how to move faster. What I want is for you to move faster, and then let teams set their own targets on their own metrics if they find it useful. Let them say, hey, let's set a target on cycle time. If they do it, it's fine, because them gaming it themselves would be stupid, right? I mean, they're not going to game their own metric. That's especially true if you aren't incentivizing it, right? I'm not telling you, oh, if you do this, I'm going to give you a bonus or I'm going to give you a promotion. Don't do that. In fact, that's the next bullet. Never attach incentives to targets. Don't put compensation, inferred promotion. I know, gasp, what am I going to do if I can't incentivize people with money? Yeah, just take money off the table. Pay them enough money as a salary so that you don't have all these little bonuses that have nothing to do, that you can't really control what the behavior they're driving, right? Bonuses are a dumb idea. I think people should just be paid what the bonus is, and just call it, give them a profit sharing thing if there's extra. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting on a soapbox about that. Recognize trying and not achieving. Those of you who don't know Carol Dweck's work on mindset, I strongly recommend you read the book Mindset. It's probably a game changer for every human being on this call. The words growth mindset and fixed mindset, if they don't mean anything to you, or if you've heard them and you don't know what they mean, read her book. It's called Mindset. Okay. But she talks a lot about individuals having a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. But in my experience professionally, teams can have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset as well. A fixed mindset is very scared to try new things. And a growth mindset is like, let's go, let's do this. I don't care. Let's try it. Right? Organizations are either safe to try things or not safe to try things. So they too can have a fixed or growth mindset. So try to recognize trying and not just accomplishing something, right? Trap number 5, I got to pick up the pace. Confusing effectiveness with efficiency. Watch the baton, not the runner. I'm giving you a link at the bottom to a video from Ken Rubin, who taught, you guys might like this, especially software developers, because Ken Rubin is talking a lot about that in this video, about how to design feature teams or component teams. But in that video is this gem that he gives around watching the baton, not the runner. And what he says, using this analogy, is that if Olympic, or let's say relay racing teams, where you hand the baton off from runner to runner until they get to the finish line, if relay racing teams were treating their runners the way corporate America treats their employees, then we would be telling all the people waiting for the baton who haven't gotten it yet, hey, I'm not paying you just to stand around here. I'm paying you to run. So while you're waiting for this baton, I want you to go run up and down that bleacher right there, or better yet, go run another race. And and then come back when the baton gets, well, what wins the race, right? It's getting the baton across the finish line first, not keeping all the runners running. Guess what? Business is just like that. Getting the baton across the finish line first means you beat your competition to market with some great new thing. Not that you had all your employees 100% utilized. Who cares, right? But so many leaders focus on the runner and not the baton. Okay. And for me, that's confusing effectiveness and efficiency. Efficiency is how often the runner's running, but effectiveness is how fast are we getting the baton across the finish line. Okay. I mean, what good as this comic is describing here, what good is it for you to be running faster if you're running in the wrong direction? You're not being effective, right? So why do leaders focus on efficiency? Why do you think they focus on it? Well, they focus on it because it's easy to spot. If I walk by your desk and see you surfing Reddit instead of coding, I will think you're not being very efficient, right? But you could be waiting for a Jenkins job to finish. And as soon as it finishes, boom, Reddit goes away and you're back right at it again. No context switching, no nothing. That's very effective, right? But it doesn't look, it's easier to spot inefficiency than it is to spot ineffectiveness. It takes effort. You have to look at the whole system to see ineffectiveness, right? So that's why leaders focus on efficiency, because it's easier. Leaders fall into this trap trying to keep everyone busy and measure individual productivity, right? They fail to notice systemic problems that cause the baton to be on the ground. So to avoid the trap, watch the baton, not the runner. Focus on the system and not the teams. In most organizations, all of the speed benefits can be achieved by looking at the system, not the teams themselves. The system with which they're operating. I cannot tell you how many times I'll see development leaders organize their teams in such a way where it looks great on paper, right? They'll put the back end team on their own team and the front end team on their own team. And they go, yeah, look at how efficient everybody is now. Everybody's working all the time. Yeah, except now the back end team finishes some work and then just drops the baton on the ground until the front end team can pick it up and do something with it, right? So the baton isn't moving very fast at all. In fact, it's sitting on the ground quite a bit. And they're not thinking about that because they're more busy thinking about keeping everybody busy and not thinking about keeping the baton moving. Okay. Avoid trying to keep everyone productive as the first goal. Instead, prioritize getting the baton across the finish line, then work on runners to getting across first, right? This is the thing. I'm not telling you that efficiency isn't important. I'm just saying it's not as important as effectiveness. Effectiveness is your first goal. Efficiency is your second goal. First, get the baton moving flawlessly without sitting on the ground, then get your runners running faster. Trap number 6, confusing outcomes with output. Okay? Are navigation systems outcome-based or output-based? I would ask that of the group right here, but I'm just gonna answer it. You just have to answer it in your head and see if you were right. They're outcome-based, right? I put a destination in, it plots a bunch of streets to get there. Those are the outputs, but it doesn't care about those streets. It cares about me getting to the output. If I miss a street, a turn, whatever, take another street, it immediately recalculates new ways for me to get there. But it's focusing on getting me there. It's not focused on telling, whoa, make a U-turn, man. You just missed the street I told you to take. That would be what it would be like if our systems were output-based, right? Thank God they're not. That would be really annoying. Okay. Well, that's what it's like to be led that way. You're being told all the boxes to check. Yeah, I want you to fire 50 arrows, a minute. Great. Well, this person just hit that output, but they didn't meet any objective. There's no goal being met. There's no outcome being met. And we want leaders to focus on outcomes, not outputs. Okay. So leaders who fall into this trap, they set performance goals based on individual outputs. Literally say in your performance review, I want to see something, blah, blah, blah. And then what they're writing is very outputty and not outcomey. They confuse efficiency, the output, with achievement, the outcome, right? Hey, they're tied together. What do you know? They take autonomy away and micromanage employees. We're literally saying, hey, instead of me just telling you where I want you to be and you figure out the streets to get there, I'm going to get in here in your world and tell you every street I want you to take all the way to the end. Okay. Well, when you take autonomy away from people, then subject matter experts will leave your company. Okay. And oftentimes this is a trap that leaders fall into when they were or are subject matter experts in the domain that they lead. right? What ends up happening is I'm a good developer, I get promoted. Now I'm a senior developer, I get promoted. Now I'm a lead developer, tech lead. Great, I get promoted. And then I get promoted to engineering manager. And suddenly everything changes. The skills I need are different, right? But what happens is I don't want to learn those new skills. I still want to be in there coding. So I start telling my team how to code. And that's not my job as an engineering manager, right? So this is a trap that subject matter experts fall into. All right, to avoid the trap, stay out of the weeds. Ask your team to tell you if they feel like you're in the weeds, right? Be honest about it and say, hey, it's going to be easy for me to fall into the trap of telling you how to do the work. If I start doing that, please remind me not to do that. If I feel strongly about being in the weeds for some reason on some specific task, I might tell you that I feel strongly about it in this case, and then we can negotiate it. I'll tell you why, and we can negotiate it. Focus on the what rather than the how. What is my team building, not how are they building it? Stakeholders celebrate what you bring them, not how you get it done, right? The people you were meeting for lunch celebrate that you got there on time, not they don't care what streets you took to get there, okay? Spend time up front defining what you want, where you want to be after the work is done. That's the outcome. If you're spending time planning how to get there, you're focusing on the outputs. As the leader, this is something for leaders, right? If you're spending time as a leader focusing on how to get there, you're focusing on outputs. Trap number 7, leadership is about having the answers. That's the one that we just discovered when I was talking to it. I was doing some executive coaching earlier this week. What do leaders need if not the answers? The questions. Leaders need the questions, not the answers. Okay? Leaders who fall into this trap mix and sometimes destroy opportunities to build trust. Here's what I mean. If you go to your team, if you're a leader and you go to your team and you say, hey, I don't know how to solve this problem. I'm counting on you guys. I need your help, right? That's why I hired you. You're all experts and I'm counting on you to help me figure out how to solve this problem. If I came to you and said that, you would trust me more, not less, right? And when I come in instead telling you how to do it, I'm missing an opportunity to express some genuine vulnerability, right? That I don't know how to do it and it's okay. I can make employees feel like a set of hands rather than a brain because I start telling everybody what to do all the time instead of just, I'm trusting you to do it, figure it out, use your brain, right? You're not just a set of hands for my brain, you're your own brain. We tend to lose experts from these teams. Experts get onto these teams and they realize pretty quickly that their boss won't let them actually do the thing they were hired to do. They know how to do it and they're constrained. They feel micromanaged, so they leave. They focus too much of their domain knowledge rather on leadership skills. As I said earlier, management is an entirely different set of skills. Okay. And unfortunately, they'd rather focus on their domain knowledge than the leadership skills. And some of them are so insecure about not knowing that they fake it. And then everybody knows they're faking it. And that's another reason why their employees lose their respect. Okay. So to avoid the trap, hire people who know as much or more than you and trust them to get the job done. By the way, this is an Agile development principle. Your job isn't to know more than them. It's to clear a path for them to shine. Okay. Ask for help from your team. Counter to what you may believe, it may increase trust in you. It will increase trust in you. Have the questions, not the answers. Memorize powerful questions. Powerful questions they never begin, well, I should say they usually begin with what and how, okay? And they're not usually answerable yes or no. Those are powerful questions. You could Google the phrase powerful questions and you'll find 1,000 websites that give sample powerful questions. If you're a leader, hell, even if you're not a leader, having powerful questions will make you an incredible listener, okay? So get curious and then use powerful questions to bring that curiosity to others. Speaking of questions, we are at lay them on me and I can hang out if we go long and you guys want to ask questions or want to discuss any part of what we just talked about.
Yeah, it's a great presentation, Sean. You truly are a expert at leadership.
Thank you.
And I will be going back to watch this again because there's a lot of points that I need to go over again.
Sorry, it's a lot of information crammed into a short period.
But it's really good. Really good. Regina, do you have some questions there in the chat?
Yes, we do. So let's start with Sherry's question. Why focus on the what instead of the how?
The what is where you're going, and the how is how you're going to get there. So you want to trust your employees on how to get there and help them figure out where you're trying to go. Your job as a leader is to help them know where they're trying to go, and then let them figure out how to do it. That's what I mean by focus on the what and not the how. What are they trying to achieve versus how are they going to achieve it? Hope that answered the question.
Yes. So next question, Ian. So related to toxic positivity, how do you feel about gallows humor? It's effectively communicative, communicates it is what it is, or it could be worse. But I don't know that I classify it as positive.
Gallows humor? I'm not familiar with that phrase. Can you read that again? I might get more out of it from the context.
Ian, can you clarify in this question, by the way? But let me find the question again. 1 second.
I could
So
Google the
related
phrase
to
too, if that
toxic.
helps.
Yes, let's see if Ian said anything. But okay, there we go. Related to toxic positivity, how do you feel about gallows humor?
Oh, I see
It
it. Yes.
effectively communicates. Yep.
Grim and ironic humor in a desperate or hopeless situation. So that's a little different, right? That's like trying to lighten up with, but it's grim humor, right? I would think of it as you're acknowledging the difficulty of it, and you're just sort of like, let's just do this, or yes, of course we're all going to fail, right? Which is different. That's like ironic humor, and I think it's actually very useful. I tend to be that way myself. I don't think of that as toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is sort of ignoring someone's genuine emotion they're bringing. Someone's bringing some like real concern about how difficult something's going to be, and what you're looking for at that moment is an acknowledgement of that. That acknowledgement can be in the form of gallows humor, right? You could say some grim thing like, ugh, I know we're probably going to get egg all over our face, and I don't care, let's go get messy, or something, right? But that's not quite the same as saying, how hard could it be? And really meaning that, like, how hard could it be? Haha, it's very different. I hope that answered the question. Just don't dismiss the emotion of the other person, right? If you're honoring it, even in humor, you're doing it right. If you're not honoring it, if you're dismissing it, it's when it gets toxic.
Got it. Thank you. Another question from Sherry. So this is referring to your zombie example. So it says, what if there was a zombie apocalypse marathon? Is it possible to have a mixture of work, or would that be called disorder?
Disorder. No. So there are some pretty firm definitions of, I didn't show you the way that they displayed. And if you Google Cynefin model, you'll see that there are some more firm things about it. I would say that, yes, it is possible to have aspects of work be complicated and aspects of work be chaotic, right? What the aspects that will be chaotic will be the ones where you're unable to determine cause and effect. And the aspects that are complicated will be ones with which you can, with your expertise, solve the problem. You might have to plan it out, but you can solve the problem. And I think you could see that even in a zombie movie, right? There are aspects in play at both. Someone is got the chaotic nature of they don't know what's happening, but at the same time, someone's planning something that they understand, and they're trying to solve a problem. So I do think they can exist in the same time. Yes.
Got it. Thank you. And then a question from Jacob. So as a leader, I often find myself spotting what I feel are leadership mistakes made by leaders above me. An example, a manager that focuses more on keeping people busy than doing effective work. What are some key techniques you've learned to navigate this tension? Like, for example, should you approach the manager and do your best to change the system? Such between you and the company you are trying to serve, you and a boss you had in the past? I think he's referring to your experience.
Right. So, I mean, here's the thing, right? If I'm being totally honest with you, there's a flat spot on my forehead from trying to get leaders to change their behavior. But remember, I'm at the time I was an Agile coach, so I was trying to influence leaders a couple clicks up from my immediate leader. So if you are, I do think, I don't want to sound hopeless. I actually do think it's possible for you to impact your immediate leader. I think where will be harder for you will be to impact systemic problems that are above your leader, especially if your leader's unable to challenge them, him or herself, right? And so I think that, yes, you can. If it's a great place that you're working and you're given the opportunity to give feedback to your leader about the way that that the work's going, then I do think that the better you can articulate this, as in like, hey, you seem to be very focused on this, give the analogy, have them watch that video, like give them the analogy of watching the baton, not the runner, right? Those analogies are very useful. I find them to be like, when I talk to people about follow the baton, not the runner, I can literally see the light bulbs popping above the leaders' heads as I'm telling them that, because you're like, how did I miss that? Like, it's so obvious when you hear the analogy, and yet that's what they're focusing on. So I think if you can wake them up through an analogy, you can often get them to realize the error of their ways and change. And here's the advice I would give you. If you can't get that leader to change, and it's really impacting who you are and how happy you are, leave. I hate to say it, but look, we all have to vote with our feet. I'm about to make the case in my book that it is a competitive advantage to a company to get this right. Why is that? Because talented people like you, Jacob, are going to pick up your feet, grab your bag, and leave the company and go and keep looking until you find a company that does this well. Okay. And that means that all the talented people are going to the companies that get this right, and everyone that no one else wants to hire will go to the companies that don't get it right. Okay. And those are the ones that won't innovate. So it is a competitive advantage, and I think you should vote with your feet if you can't get your leader to change.
All right, thank you. So next question from Calvin. What should be done if two or more people fighting over what's best for the group and couldn't work anything out together?
Okay, so here, I'll give you a book to read. I'm sorry, I'm a library of books, and there's some very good books around what you're talking about right now. So there's a book written by a group called the Arbinger Institute, and it's called The Anatomy of Peace. And if you're in a position where what you're describing, I'll just give you one example. There's several techniques in that book around how to solve. Yeah, The Anatomy of Peace. You got it right, Sherry. So that book will describe one technique. There are many others, so don't think this is the only one, which is start where you agree and move to the place you disagree. Many of us start from the place we disagree and try to find the place we agree. That's a really inefficient, I'll say ineffective maybe, way of reaching a place, So I think often when we start from a place where we agree and sort of slowly walk to the place we disagree, we find that it's actually on little things, and we really agree about much bigger things. And that's often all it takes to get two groups or two camps, if you will, to sort of see something similarly. They start realizing we share a lot of the same values, right? You just think we should solve it this way, and I think we should solve it that way. Well, it's just helpful to know that you think the same way I do in most of this, right? So yeah, read that book. There's lots of stuff in there.
Perfect, thank you. Another question from Sherry. In the Cynefin model, what differentiates the top half versus the bottom half?
Nothing. It actually isn't that way. It's divided left and right. So there's nothing that differentiates top to bottom. If anything, it's more like a clock, right? So the way I describe it is most problems, especially big problems, go clockwise. They start at chaos. Nobody knows what's going on. Like the system is down. Everybody's freaking out. Nobody knows what's wrong. That's chaos. And then you start poking at it. We call it probing, right? You're probing the problem. If you read the Cynefin model, they'll say that the correct response for leaders in chaos is to probe. You're going to try things just randomly, just try things. And every once in a while, stuff will make it. They'll make sense to you. And then once they make sense to you, they start to move to complex. It's like, things are starting to get complex now. And those turn into experiments. Then you start to learn more from those experiments, and it becomes complicated. So you're moving clockwise around the model. And then eventually it's so old hat that you could do it with one hand tied behind your back, and some aspects of it become very elementary or basic. Hope that was helpful.
All right, thank you. Another question, how might you address these various attitudes, defensive attitude, avoidant attitude, stonewalling attitude?
Defensive attitude, stonewalling. So, does this mean the team that you're on is in storming mode? Are you having is it like World War III on this team, or does everybody become passively aggressive? Stonewalling is a bit immature. So there could be that problem going on. Look, there's a ton of things. Like what you just named off is so many different scenarios. A book that I would recommend you read is Crucial Conversations. If not The Anatomy of Peace, because both of those will play nicely on each other, even though they're not written by the same folks. Yeah, Crucial Conversations. Crucial Conversations will talk about techniques like contrasting, right? By the way, what's a crucial conversation? Emotions are high, opinions differ, and there's a third one. I can't remember the third factor, but there's three, right? If you're in a state like that where these three factors are met, you're having a crucial conversation. And the way you have a crucial conversation briefly is, hey, I've observed that you've been late to the last 3 meetings. That's different than saying you're always late. See? So the first thing they're having you do is say something very objective. The last 3 meetings you've been late. What I'm making up about that is that you don't care about this meeting. That's why you're always late. But tell me what's really going on, right? That's an invitation. Those 3 steps, something objective that can't be argued with, followed by the story you're writing about it. You're telling them it's the story you're writing about it. You're not saying this is the truth. You're saying this is my truth right now. And then you say to the other person, now tell me what's really going on. Yeah, you invite them in to tell you what's really going on. That's one example of crucial conversation. There's many other techniques in there, but all those scenarios you just gave, there's probably some crucial conversations buried into that somewhere.
All right, thank you, Sean. Next question. So what advice on topic or off topic today's discussion would you have for your audience? The majority of us looking to land a new software developer job within the next 6 months. Just basically they're trying to stand out.
Yeah. Repeat the first part of the question because I lost the off topic thing or whatever.
Yeah. So basically what advice would you have for your audience who are trying to land a software developer job within the next 6 months, if it's related to today's topic or not?
Gotcha. Okay. Here's what I would tell you. It's going to depend on your own personal situation, right? So if you're sitting there figuring out how to keep the lights on in your house, take whoever will hire you. Okay. If you're not in that spot, then if I were you, I would rewatch this talk. I would come up with some questions with which you could ask a team or when you're being interviewed that help you determine what kind of environment is this that I'm working in, right? A great question to ask people who are interviewing you is, if you were going to recommend this team to teammates, or say, how would you recommend on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate working here? What's it like? Don't ask the manager that because the manager wants to hire you. And so they're just going to lie to you. Ask employees that are teammates that are interviewing you, especially if it's one-on-one. A lot of times, tell me the part that's the worst part about working here. And then tell me the part that's the best part about working here, right? Give me both sides. Tell me what makes you really like coming in every day, and tell me what makes you not want to come in some days, right? And then just hear what it is. And if it's something that really violates a value of yours, move on if you can. Now, I mean, that's me giving you advice on how to choose an employer. That may not be the same question you're asking me. If you're asking me, how do I make myself look good to another employer? I think it's going to depend on whether that employer is enlightened with what the things I'm talking about right now or isn't. Because some employers are looking for good soldiers, just people are going to come in and do what they tell you to do. And other employers are expecting, who get this and do this right, are going to be expecting you to come in with some critical thinking skills. And so any way that you can demonstrate critical thinking skills around, like, here, let me just give you one example real quick. Okay. I was interviewing an Agile coach one time for Nike to come into Nike. I was on the interview panel for this Agile coach. And I noticed on her resume, it said, she was interviewing for a Scrum Master position. This is a key part. And I noticed on her resume that her previous job, she was an Agile coach. Now, if you're in my field, I don't want to think of this as hierarchical, but that's a step down, right? If you're an Agile coach and then you're applying for a Scrum Master job, that raises red flags for me, because why wouldn't you be applying for another Agile coach job? So that's the first question I asked her. Like, what's the reason that you are applying for this Scrum Master job? I noticed here that you said Agile coach on your thing. And this is what she says to me. It's time for me to be vulnerable. I said, go for it. And she said, I took a job as an Agile coach last job, and I was way over my head. And what I'm realizing is I need to take a step back and work under an Agile coach to really learn more about how to do this right. And I'm like, hire this woman right now. Anybody who can tell you what they don't know and is okay telling you what they don't know, if that organization doesn't respect that, find another organization. I would rather hear somebody tell me what they don't know and that they know that they don't know that and they want to learn it than to try to pretend that they know it and then fake it. That's not going to do it. So look, there's your graduation tip for today. Don't fake it. Be vulnerable.
Great, thank you. We don't have that much time, so I'll grab these two last questions. But Jacob has a question. Are there any recruiters or platform other than LinkedIn you'd recommend?
I'm sorry, I don't have any information about that. I can't, I don't want to pretend. There we go. I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to pretend. I have no idea.
Got it, thank you. And then Sherry's question, how might you respond a pair of leaders who cancel culture you when you come up with an innovative or helpful idea that helps the entire team, especially when the psychological safety has already been eroded by them in a short amount of time?
Wow. This is what would go into subreddit called oddly specific. Which I would say this is, I'm sorry you're going through this situation because that sounds crappy. How would I respond? Well, again, I would use it. That's a crucial conversation. What you described to me is a crucial conversation because I can't remember the third factor. We could probably Google it right now, but I think you're hitting all three. Opinions differ, emotions are high, and something else. But that third one, I know we're checking that box here. A crucial conversation is an art form, and the degree, this is one of the, so I'm going to be vulnerable with you guys. I'm gay. And as a gay guy, I've had to go through all kinds of stuff in my career. I've had to put up with homophobic jokes at work and, where I've decided every time I started a new company, I have to come out again all over. It's like a big deal. So if you're gay, and you probably know what I'm talking about, but what I have learned, and I'm 51, so I'm an old fart now, but what I have learned in my life is that I change hearts and minds in a different way than I'm seeing it attempted now. What I'm seeing now is people being kind of bullied into compliance. And I don't think that's going to change hearts and minds. I changed a lot of hearts and minds in my life by being who I am, being vulnerable, telling them how it's landing for me, what's actually happening in my world. And I find that empathy does come out of people when they see that. And so maybe just go at it from the I'm feeling ignored instead of I'm feeling canceled, right? It's not as hot of a topic, and it doesn't put people, managers especially, will get very suddenly very stiff when you use those words, because it begins to sound like I need to call HR, right? Uh-oh, I have to shut up, because if I say something now, I could get in deep trouble. So I'm going to stop talking. And that's the last thing you want, right? You want them talking because you really want them listening. And so my suggestion is go in with some crucial conversation techniques and get a dialogue going with them. And don't be afraid to say, I'm feeling ignored. That's perfectly valid. And it's, you know what I mean? It will pull out, hopefully it will pull out a little empathy in the situation. Maybe they don't even understand what that might look like. Maybe they don't realize they're causing that to happen. I hope that's helpful. It's a hot topic for me too, you know?
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Sean. Would LinkedIn be a good place where people can connect with you?
Absolutely. Look me up on LinkedIn. Grab in. That's how you're going to find out my book gets released too, because I'm going to make a big storm up there. Thank you for posting that. Yes, that's how you get to me. You know, I'm not on Twitter. I hate it. It's a cesspool. I'm not on Facebook for sure, because that was a bigger cesspool. And so LinkedIn's going to be my primary marketplace until I hire a marketer who tells me I'm crazy and I need to be on those other two platforms, and I'll probably do it again. But anyway, yeah. Looking forward to connecting with all of you, and thank you for being an audience for me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great
thank you so
presentation,
much
Sean.
for sharing. Yes.
Yeah, no, great presentation. We do look forward to the book coming out. And yeah, it's something, like I said, I'm going to watch again. There's so many points here that are so good. And I really need, I feel I'm a good leader, but I definitely have things I got to work on. And this made me think of it today. So that's great.
I'm so glad that happened, that impact. That's what I want, right? I want to have that impact. If you just got one of these and thought, oh, I need to work on that, I won. That's what I wanted, right?
There's a couple.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get this. When I talk about toxic leaders and how, you know, they can slowly kill your company, I'm not saying that everybody these leaders wake up and say, I hope to destroy this company today. They don't realize they're doing it. And that's what I'm hoping to do, is wake leaders up to this behavior they're doing that is slowly killing their company. So yeah. Thank you.
No, good stuff.
Yes.
And anything to add, Regina?
Yeah, I was just gonna say there are some things when you explain it, like I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense, but I just never looked at it from that perspective. So it was very informative. And also we are recording this, so I will be or Rick will be posting this later on YouTube today. And here's a link if you want to watch this back. I did put my email in the chat in case you guys do want Sean's slides. So email me and I will forward that to you. But thank you all for joining in. Thank you so much, Sean, for joining us. Good luck on the book and the company, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Sean.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a great weekend, everyone. We will see you next week.
See you next week.